Whoa. Hey, what's up guys, it's Arun, and today I've got a really good video straight for you guys.
This was me 1 week ago, right before everything went wrong.
Come on, buddy.
Yeah, it was bad. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start a year ago. This is me, and this is my friend Noah. For the last few years, we've been playing video games on our PlayStations. Now, as much as I love my PlayStation, there's a few reasons why I don't like it. First of all, video games cost a huge amount of money, anywhere from $50 to $100 when they come brand new. Secondly, if you want to play online, it costs almost $12 a month just to get an online subscription, when on PC that's completely free. Finally, the main reason is the PlayStation doesn't output a solid 60 frames in most titles. I know this is not a very big deal for a lot of people, but for someone like me, I prefer to have a high frame rate even at a lower quality. But unfortunately, Sony doesn't actually let you change any of the graphics to improve your frame rate. I could get into more reasons like poor storage, slow start times, often tendency to crash, poor internet quality, and input delay, but those are problems I can deal with. For me, a high frame rate was more important than having high quality. So about 1 year ago, I made the switch to PC. And since then, I've been trying to convince my friend Noah to get a PC as well. But unfortunately, he was way less willing to switch to the PC than I was. So I finally managed to convince him to switch to PC. I devised an entire parts list for the computer I was going to build. It was going to be very budget oriented because he had a small amount of money he wanted to spend. But because of the current state in the world, all the parts took a very long time to arrive. And finally, when they did, I tried to put it together. And that's when the problems started. So starting off with the case, I picked up the Cougar MX 330 black ITX case with a side window. I mainly chose this case because of its good value for performance and because it came with a built-in 500 watt PSU, which was actually really good quality. This case usually goes for around 89 to 100 Australian dollars, but because of inflation, current circumstances, it ended up going for $112. As far as the quality of the case goes, it was actually quite poor, and even though the case looks really good and polished from the outside, really basic things were just not there. Even at the end when I was trying to install the side acrylic window, one of the screws just simply wouldn't screw in. The metal hole inside had stripped clean, and the case just wasn't working the way it should. I also picked up 3 case fans to help with the airflow inside of the case. The cool thing about these fans is that they actually glow blue when the computer is turned on, and they give it a really nice aesthetic. Installing the 3 case fans was actually pretty simple. There's enough space for 2 fans at the front and a DVD drive, but again, the case only came with enough parts to install 1 fan. So with a bit of creativity and a few zip ties, I managed to install 2 more right above it. For the CPU cooler, I chose the Cooler Master Hyper TX3 Evo. I mainly chose this cooler because of its performance and the fact that it supports many different CPUs. There's a bunch of different socket mounts, and if you want to expand to a more powerful CPU later on, you don't have to worry about overheating at all. Setting up the cooler for the 1155 socket was actually pretty simple. It took a little bit of fiddling around, but the instructions were quite clear and it provided all the parts you could possibly need to pull off this kind of an operation. And the cooler cost $32. Next up, everyone's favorite part, the graphics card. I chose the RX 460 initially, but after doing some testing, I realized it wasn't quite powerful enough and ended up upgrading it to an RX 480. The model I have here is the MSI Overclock edition with 4 GB of VRAM. You can check one of my earlier videos and you can definitely see that it's very powerful even in most modern titles. I picked up this card for 160 Australian dollars and it was definitely worth all the money. For the storage, I picked up a 120 GB Kingston SSD from Gumtree for about 39 Australian dollars. Again, with the current inflation, this was a really good price value. Initially, I tried to install this into the front of the case, but after noticing that the case wasn't designed for this, I switched it to the back. I also picked up a $20 500GB Toshiba hard drive, which will be used for downloading games and bigger applications. So moving on to the motherboard, this is where our problem started to begin. The board I picked up was a Dell OEM board and had a bunch of proprietary connections which stopped us attaching the front USB ports and the front audio panel. However, it did come with a cable that did allow us to connect our CPU fan to the motherboard. The main problem started, however, when I wasn't able to fit this motherboard into our case. You see, this Dell OEM board is way wider than a regular ATX motherboard, and so just wouldn't fit into the case. I managed to get around this by installing less standoff screws and only screwing in half of them, but in hindsight I really should have just stopped here and looked for a different option. Finally, the main issue I really had with this motherboard was I wasn't able to install my graphics card. You see, the main power connector is actually located at the bottom of the board, whereas on most motherboards it's located on the right hand side. This is to accommodate a bigger size graphics card, but because this was designed for an OEM machine, there was no space for installing a big graphics card. I was almost ready to give up on the build at this point, but I ended up looking online and I saw a really good deal for a motherboard priced at $50. It also came with an i5 3470, which was an upgrade over the i5 2400 I was planning on putting in this build. The only problem was it was an hour away and somebody had already messaged him that he wanted to pick it up. So I offered him $80 and he accepted, and I ended up driving an hour drive to pick up this motherboard.
Don't know how well you can see that, guys, but I just picked this up. It was $80, and I've taken a quick look, and it looks like we have an i7 3770 in here, not an i5. That is insane. So we picked this up for $80. There's actually a PCIe Wi-Fi card down in there, but our graphics card is going to fit on this one for sure. Whew, that's really amazing. I cannot believe we picked this up for $80. That's and also down in here there is an IO shield for this motherboard, so thank God for that.
When I got home, I couldn't wait to test out if the motherboard was working or not, so I got to work straight away even though it was quite late at night and installed it into the computer. I put everything together and it all fit perfectly, and that's when I ran into my next problem. You see, the motherboard is actually stuck in a boot loop. Every time I turned the computer on, the motherboard would crash and turn the entire computer back off. It would keep repeating this and the fans would spin up really fast and turn back off. I messaged the seller of the motherboard about the problems I was having, and he sent me a picture that explained how I can reset the BIOS on the board. So I followed the simple instructions and I managed to get the computer running again. And yet again, I ran into another problem. Turns out the 8GB of Corsair RAM that I bought on eBay was in fact two 2GB sticks of RAM, making a total of 4GB, not 8. I did end up getting refunded my money back, but I did have to pay for the postage, which was about $9, and that kinda sucked. One thing to make sure you always keep in mind when you're buying online is to do your research and be sure that you're getting exactly what you're paying for. I ended up having one spare stick of 4GB of RAM, and we picked up another one for $20, so in the end it actually worked out a little bit better. But of course I ran into one final problem before the build was completely done. The hard drives were completely formatted wrong, and it took quite a bit of work, and I had to go into safe mode inside of Windows to finally format them in the correct way. But once everything was done, this was the result.
We got there in the end, guys. That was a mad PC to put together. I think it came out really good in the end. I really don't want to give the false impression that this is the kind of PC you can easily replicate, because a lot of the deals I got, which is definitely not what you'll find on average in the market. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Very hard video to make. I think it came out really good, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.